All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for Legend of the Galactic Heroes, episode 71.
Iserlon has been retaken.
Very easily. Easily. It was
handily.
It was an effective plan. Mm-hmm. It was a combination of subterfuge, manipulation of communications,
right?
And
mental states and all of that.
Yep. And then just clever tactics, and then also just the actual abilities of the Reuenthal.
Right. Yes. Yeah. The fact that the Reuenthal,
they're still kicking ass and taking names for the Alliance, saving their asses many times.
And when they were introduced,
already.
It was kind of one of those things of okay, but how useful will they actually be? Because they're a ground force in a
But they are the go-to ground force for the entire show.
Not just the go-to,
for the
GOAT ground force. If it ever comes to personal hand-to-hand combat or,
ever,
personal
for anything
scale weapons,
in the Alliance. The Reuenthal.
Yeah, Reuenthal. There you go.
Yep. The Alliance doesn't have ground forces,
Yeah.
But we're in a situation where Bewcock is going to be stopping the Black Lancers, or attempting to, through some kind of pincer maneuver.
But he does have 20,000 ships. A lot more than we expected.
A lot more.
I feel like he actually could probably beat Bittenfeld here.
He could at least cause a lot of problems for Reinhardt.
Because I feel like he'll have the advantage of numbers at the very least. But he can't afford to lose too many ships to Bittenfeld. That's the thing. Because then it'd be over.
Yeah. So, y'all, without further ado, let's get into this. All right, everyone. Now be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below. Then come back here for the discussion. Right, Bewcock and Carlson are desperate.
Yep.
And they came up with a very cool, desperate plan. Utilize a Spartan-style corridor.
Right.
Just situation where you force the Imperial advanced fleets to go into the corridor, get bogged down, do some kind of pincer attack maneuver, or it's like, yes, we'll come in here on this side, and it's like, okay, cool, we'll just leave now and go after Reinhardt while you guys are stuck in this annoying space that we've laden with traps, mines, and all kinds of shit, and then just beeline towards Reinhardt's flagship, but they just might all die before they even get there.
Right.
There's still over 50,000 ships, probably.
Oh, yeah. This very much feels like our fleet is disintegrating as we go.
Yes.
But
we're getting a lot of ground.
But who cares, because we just care about the one ship.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, and this is also a great lesson for Reinhardt, even though he's probably not going to learn it, because
he'll probably win.
Well, he'll probably win, but also that this wasn't his intent going into this. So not only will he win the fight, right? But these sacrifices, these losses, don't really mean much of anything to him. Nope. Probably is that a lot of this stuff would have been very avoidable. Probably
very avoidable,
because one, don't fight him, just go to Heinesen, right? Yep. Or only fight him with some of your forces, do a regular-ass fight, and then send the rest of the forces to Heinesen.
Sure.
Or this as well, anything that they're doing in a territory, you should theoretically be able to do too, because technology is the same. Now, they've taken the time to prepare.
Yeah,
right?
that's probably the main difference.
They've chosen the battlefield, and you are not acknowledging the fact that they chose this battlefield.
It is a place to die, though.
Oh, yes,
that
totally.
was the acknowledgement that he's like, this is a very good spot to die.
Right.
You have no really good retreat area from here.
But Reinhardt isn't fearing the cornered animal.
Oh, of course not.
It's the thing where because he's so proud and so sure of his victory,
very much so. Yeah.
He's going to lose a lot more forces than he needs to. He already has, right?
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
He should have been able to win this fight without even losing that many forces, right? Hell, if he had sent in
I don't think that's the point, though.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't really care.
No, totally. Minimizing his losses is not on the agenda. If that were the case, he wouldn't have gone into the fight in the first place, and that's a great, just again,
it's
parallel.
Having the fight.
Well, right, and it's that coming full circle, going back to the point where we saw the Empire was and the Alliance was in the beginning of the story, where who cares about what's actually tactically, strategically sound or whatever? We're going to do this for the glory of it, right? For the honor.
For the thrills of it, yeah.
Honor is for the dead, right?
Yeah.
And
which is funny, because Bittenfeld's AFK, essentially, where'd Bittenfeld go?
Yeah.
Who knows, you know?
I gotta say though, as far as like all the tactics of this episode, like I would have liked to see little bits of connecting points, but I love the idea that for someone like Bittenfeld, the best way to deal with them is to ignore them.
Yeah, he might have been the wisest one here, and that's why we don't see him.
Yeah,
is he just went to Heinesen?
Well, right. And if anything, that's the biggest potential issue with ignoring Bittenfeld, because you know the more forces, that's one thing, but then there's also the idea that the alliance is defending. So there are certain, like, if it's just a matter of ships and numbers, then yeah, they could just go off and bugger off and do whatever kind of guerrilla tactics they want, but there's targets that they need to make sure are kept, right? And that is something that they can't do with this setup, but thankfully Reinhardt wants to fight them. Bittenfeld, in his case, I could see that maybe he doesn't go to Heinesen as directly as maybe he otherwise would have, because he also wants that fight. And he's like, wait, where'd they go? They're gone. You know, like, this is, I don't just want to walk in and take a planet. You know, that's boring.
Bittenfeld wasn't in this episode. So
but he wasn't in this episode, yeah.
Okay, so tactics-wise, I think that what Reinhardt did here is pretty simple. He didn't really do anything special. This is a way to showcase in a lot of ways what makes a lot of the admirals themselves actually very competent.
Yes.
Knapstein and Grill Parser, the new guys here. I really liked the speed at which they emphasized all their tactics being implemented. And that was the thing, that while their tactics were rudimentary and were not necessarily anything game-changing, they were quick to act in these regards, and thus they're living up to their kind of names as the new young twin stars. None of them were defeated here. It's basically the example of they were out-cunninged by an old fox, basically.
Yeah.
They were big hunting dogs. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. They charged into the thicket.
And they were predictable.
And their noses got bloodied.
Right.
And now they're they're chasing their tails. They don't know where they are. So they were effectively defeated on the battlefield, and yet, as far
defeated
as...
on the battlefield, not all slaughtered.
Not all defeated in terms of their fleet.
Right.
Well, Fahrenheit was sent in with basically the, hey, here we go.
Yep.
Let's get them from the rear.
And I loved how Fahrenheit was used here. Like,
yes.
I love that it didn't go according to plan necessarily, but then it also...
And he still acted independently and did some really cool stuff.
But yeah,
with
he
that.
acted independently. He thought quickly on his feet. One of the biggest... That was
one of his traits.
Right. That's one of his traits, and I feel like from the show, the thing that we've seen that has truly distinguished between the people that just have a lot of ships versus the people that are actually like good at leading those ships, good at tactics, is the ability to think on their feet, because no plane survives contact with the enemy, right?
Exactly.
And the biggest problem with their approach to Bewcock here is that they weren't expecting some kind of unexpected stuff, right? Reuenthal and Reinhardt talk about the mines and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, that's a good point. We should have thought of that, right? Like that would have been great." But for the guys actually going in, they're too hungry, right? It's
Reinhardt too.
Yes.
Reinhardt, all he had to do, and this is something that is just very basic, but it's also, I would say, a thing that the show kind of glosses over and assumes you catch, is that they did actually wait a few days outside the corridor before going in.
Oh.
And that's something that the show just glosses over and is like, hey, here we go, January 9th, I believe, and then they go to like January 13th, or they think it's January 13th when they arrive, and then it's the 16th when they actually go in.
Gotcha.
So there was time spent by the Empire to sit there and prep and think about some ways in which they can handle this here.
Right.
And it was probably a lot of it just assessing what kind of the threat and logistics stuff.
When you have 100,000 ships, things are going to move a bit slower, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's really the negative, I would say, that the Empire has in this situation, is that they can never really utilize all their ships. So, from their perspective, and I like this, is that they just utilize the corridor to their own advantage by being like, well, okay, we'll only have two exit points, right?
Yep.
And then the Alliance is like, no, actually, we're going to go out through the side. It's going to be slow, but
we can do it.
We're going to do it desperately, so that we can take advantage of the amount of time you'd assume it would take for us to get out of here.
Because really, like, I mean, you know, Reinhardt, you could, like, and this is, again, the whole thing of it's the character flaw, right? But in this situation, they could have, like, split into two halves. 50,000 here, keep them occupied. Other 50,000, go take everything, right? It's a repeat of...
No. Remember, that's the corridor thing. You can't actually field 50,000 effectively into the corridor.
Wait.
That was the whole.
No. 50,000
on each side of the corridor.
That then splits into 25 on each side. Yeah, or something like that. You basically just make it so that they can't leave.
Well, where would they go? I'm confused. What are you saying?
And then the other group just goes and takes Heinesen, does all the stuff.
But why risk an actual loss? Because there's no other alliance fleet. You don't need 50,000 ships to take Heinesen.
Okay, sure.
You could send 2,000 ships and take Heinesen.
Yeah, send a fleet.
Yeah, let's
hope that's what Bittenfeld's still doing.
That's the thing. Yeah. I don't think it makes any sense for them to split up their forces when the 20,000 alliance ships are here, and that's not a small number.
No,
outnumbering them 5-1.
But 5-1 versus 4-1 won't make much of a difference.
No, it really could actually. It really could. The tactics by Bewcock basically set it up to where they're now only outnumbered 2-1, basically, or maybe 2.5-1. That's a huge thing that was changed like that because of some really clever tactics.
Yes,
and some blundering by the young bucks.
Right
now, it's saved in a lot of ways because Fahrenheit is chasing the one half of their fleet that is
it's a tempo
led by
thing,
Carlson.
Right? There's this moment where now they're 2.5-1, right? Because they're going after Reinhardt's ships, right? Or whatever it ends up being.
And they sacrifice their corridor advantage.
They sacrifice the corridor advantage. They're going to be losing incredible amounts of ships. On this, charge.
Death charge, basically.
Yeah, death charge, right?
Yeah, this is in chess when you throw away 2 or 3 pieces for a board space advantage.
And what I'm very curious to see is that in this situation, all Reinhardt has to do is be like, cool, we're going to reverse thruster. They want to come after us, and we'll bleed them dry as they chase us. Our ships can match their speed. There you go, right? And then everyone that's chasing them eventually just...
Yeah, remember the sandwich?
Well, but even
back then, when they had the layers of fleets, and they basically would have them go through, and then they would reassemble and reassemble and reassemble.
But even with that, that was great.
That's a tactic you could use here,
right? Because you slow them down, which gives the ones the time to go back and
fire them as they pass by.
Yeah, exactly. But Reinhardt's so proud that he won't actually have his forces move in reverse, right? Like. At least from what we've seen.
No, we haven't been given any tactical detail of what Reinhardt's done in response yet, because this is all a very active situation right now.
Given that we haven't gotten any detail about what Reinhardt's doing in response, I'm assuming that he is basically not really doing anything in response as far as his own positioning, right?
Yeah,
he's the command tower and everyone else is doing their things.
Yeah, I disagree. I think it's just it's a perspective thing of these are the characters that are worth giving perspective to right now. The episode ends with Reinhardt's basically like crew standing there, and it's like, okay, the next perspective we get when the next episode begins will be Reinhardt.
Okay, Reinhardt's not... I'm sure. Yes, that is a great point. I'm going to posit that I think it's that Reinhardt actually wants them to come to him because he also wants to be the one to defeat them, right? That's why he sends out the smaller fleets, even though they're not experienced enough to actually be able to match up with Bewcock, right? Like even though he doesn't know
what the pawns go first.
Right, in chess the pawns go first. He's wanting to flush out Bewcock so that way he can have the fight, not just the 100,000 ships that I have here, but me personally, right?
Yeah.
And that's it's playing into Bewcock's hand, right? Bewcock is playing Reinhardt the person,
right?
Even more so than Reinhardt the strategist, and that's that extra just bit of pride that everyone else will get to see, right? It is on display. They're noticing the choices that you're making, Reinhardt. Mariendorf had that moment of like just closing her eyes and being like, okay, this is what we're doing.
He's the leader with the white ship that wishes it was stained a little bit more often. That it required a little bit more cleaning.
It's a bit too clean, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's sickening in some ways because it seems like, in a lot of ways, the nobility disease of the mind thing that was brought up in the earlier parts of the show.
Right, because he's assuming that if he goes into a battle that he will win.
Yeah.
As opposed to being like, yes, I won.
These are the reasons why I won.
These are the reasons why I won,
This is the reason that brought about my victory.
Because
the reasoning, if you will.
Because one might say that to actually seek conflict of this nature is a form of insanity.
It's folly.
Or folly. That's a good way. That's a good way of saying it.
Yeah.
And previously, Reinhardt was young enough, and he had the drive.
He's still really young.
Young of mind, let's say, because the motivations that he had were strong enough. I must save my sister. I must do all these things, right? Like that. There was purpose to the folly. Right, and that was the whole point. We always knew that he would burn, bright and fast, right? Fast, yeah. Golden boy, right? But in this situation, it's just for entertainment, and that's very similar to what the nobility would do.
Yeah.
So
yeah. However, I will say that I think there is almost zero threat that realistically Bewcock poses to Reinhardt.
Yes, as far as predictions about the show and everything, I would say that there is like 5% or less chance that Reinhardt would actually
die here. The reason why is because, as Reuenthal pointed out, this is something that is this is something where the blood of the gods of history basically are thirsty.
I love that conversation,
and have been awakened basically to a time when things are changing, and thus we will need the lands, the skies, the planets soaked in blood. But whose blood and what quality of blood? And Mittermeier was like, whoa. I know that you're a little bit ambitious, but you better shut up or I'm going to have to turn you in or something.
Right.
Now, Reuenthal is at his side, at Reinhardt's side.
Yeah.
However, he was about to be issued fleet-wise.
Right, and I'm not sure if that was actually like you sally forth Reuenthal, or like this fleet will go out and you'll be the one directly not directly but remotely managing them. Yeah.
The thing is that if Reuenthal is issued out, and this is where Jacob and I have many experiences and stories with these kinds of space battles and stuff, is when you have your rival positioned on your bridge, you're actually the safest you can be.
Yep.
Like that's extremely safe.
The most you have to deal with is them potentially trying to assassinate you in person, which would be idiotic.
They will never do
so
that.
many levels.
They will never do that.
Yeah.
He's not Bittenfeld or Bewcock,
Right, or Shunkoff.
Or Shunkoff, exactly. He would never do that. But if you give him a fleet and you say, hey, be my last line of defense.
Yeah, then
that's different.
That is very different.
That's something else where there can be mistakes. There can be slip-ups.
Oh, no, right. It doesn't have to be, I directly turn and fire on your bridge.
Right.
But it can be, oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, I was a little bit...
battleship went through.
Yeah, I was a little bit too slow, like getting back to you on time, oh,
yeah,
darn.
Turn the ship 45 degrees. Port? No, starboard. Why starboard? You'll see in a second.
Right.
They got through on our port side. Oh no! Who could have known?
My secret technique, ultimate tactic, didn't. This is the one time it hasn't worked.
Okay, but in all respect here, guys, the big thing that this episode did was it actually showcased tactics that we were able to follow in a way that felt legitimate.
Right.
A lot of the tactics in this show at times feel so entirely one-sided to showcase the intelligence of a character when it really just makes the other side look stupid because they're all supposed to be military,
Right. There's no reason
like admirals.
There's no reason why they shouldn't do proper research.
Exactly. We're past the era of the nobility.
Exactly.
The whole I was born into this role rather than the I earned this role.
Right. Because for that it makes sense because then it's not just conflict and also keeping it choppy and quick for the sake of the story.
Which this one was.
Which this one was, and I appreciated that.
Yeah.
But it's also then commentary on the society within this show of look at how just awful this thing is. It needs to change.
Which is why Fahrenheit's tactics were really appreciated here because he basically just broke half of the Alliance fleet into a pincer position here.
Right.
Where now Mueller and him will squish them.
Right.
Like
a pincer formation can quickly turn into, oh shit, we actually divided our forces.
But that's not what's happening here. I'm talking about how Fahrenheit basically chased Carlson out of the corridor, or not out of the corridor, but out of the belt, and basically is now bumping up on their rear as they try to go through Mueller, and Mueller is trying to be like a shield in everywhere.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm talking about because the Alliance forces split their forces in order to basically try and when they tried to squish them in the corridor, they're like, haha, we knew you were going to do that, and then we're going to do that to you as well, and then we can double back and get Fahrenheit.
I'm talking about something that happened way later.
No, I know, but then Fahrenheit managed to maneuver out of it and then chased the other guy, not Bewcock, I forget his name.
Carlson.
Yeah, Carlson, right? As a result of that, now suddenly, when you tried to do that pincer movement, you separated your fleets for a bit.
Who are you talking about now?
Bewcock and the Alliance.
Oh, okay.
They split their forces into the two groups.
Right.
And then as a result of that, Fahrenheit can then focus on Carlson's group and actually deal with that as a much more manageable force, right? And then he can apply pressure onto their maneuvers, right?
Yeah. As far as I was able to understand, it didn't seem like they could actually employ any kind of a pincer maneuver immediately upon Reinhardt, because they had to get their fleets initially out of the belt.
Yeah, the pincer was on the people in the corridor.
Right,
That's what I was saying.
Right, yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
So then when they leave, they're all leaving through the same bit. It's basically a staggered bit of fleets. You have Carlson's, who is leading the charge. Mueller hits them. Fahrenheit hits them from behind. And then Bewcock's about to come up on Fahrenheit from behind, but then decides, no, they're distracted. Go straight for Reinhardt, about face.
Which is curious, because since Carlson's also going for Reinhardt, I'm curious how Bewcock would do that. Maybe it's that because...
Well, no, they just parallel.
Oh, sure.
They don't have to go at it from the same way. And also, Reinhardt isn't just staying still.
Right. And Mueller's being kept busy, and hence why he split off the three subsections of the fleet to be like, okay, we really need to stop them. I need to be two shields right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And thus Bewcock is going to get through the 30% that he gave off.
And that is why I was really curious what the situation was with Reinhardt's maneuvers in the HQ side of the fleet.
Yeah, we haven't gotten that perspective yet.
Because we haven't gotten that perspective yet. Yeah. Because they specifically said that Mueller would be able to buy time, which...
Right, because he's dealing with 10,000 ships with
right.
4,000 or something.
Yeah, whatever he's got. But as a result of that, that's basically saying once Mueller is actually engaged by the enemy, we're going to be going into like, all right, let's
moment
by moment, let's move very carefully.
Well, right, that's what the end of the episode kind of was that there was a lot of little micro movements, especially from Fahrenheit coming up on, I believe. He actually even he situates himself into a position where he can actually attack Bewcock as they pass by, and
when he was hoping they would their forces would cross or whatever.
No, at the end here.
Gotcha.
So Carlson. Let's see here.
But yeah, I gotta say that because this felt like things that were where the little discrepancies and problems that were being made on the side of the Empire was for the most part because of character decisions, and that good clever planning on the Alliance forces, because this is the only way that they'd actually be able to fight them, right? So they kind of had to do something like this. They had to find some asteroid belt where there's a corridor and things like that, some place where they can get a choke point. And then the fact that Reinhardt is starting to slip back into that nobility bit, the little bits of mistakes that are made by the pawns that are sent in, if it's a bad pawn formation, basically, right, or a pawn formation that gets taken advantage of, if it does give kickback into Reinhardt of is he actually it's not necessarily incompetence as it is his mental decline, right? Like his emotional decline, the fact that he's not actually putting the interests of his troops at a priority, right? It's just I desire blood.
Here it is. So Mueller breaks off a bit of his fleet to stop Bewcock.
Right.
Then, essentially, Fahrenheit notices that this is where they're breaking through, and has his fleet actually stop chasing Carlson and come at
Bewcock?
Bewcock here. And he has his whole, don't let them through!
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And then they're like, oh,
and
okay.
then Carlson's like, okay, this is our chance.
Now, because, Mueller is no longer being...
Right, which
a thick shield, basically. We can break through him. So there's this constant, switching back and forth of focus here which will lead ultimately to a lot of losses on both sides.
Yes.
But I do think that this is going to be one of those things where Reinhardt will basically have the few ships actually get within sight of where they'd be able to shoot him, and then they'd be just obliterated by a barrage of fire. And it's just like, yes.
What I would love to see, so and this is kind of funny how this works out, is that because Fahrenheit shifted his attention to Bewcock basically is like, okay, we're not actually in a good position to do a glorious charge to get to Reinhardt, right?
Right.
So he kind of pulls back a bit. As a result of that, the person that's going on the glorious charge to get to Reinhardt is a character that we care much less about, right? Because that would be so sad if Bewcock is going on this crazy charge to get to Reinhardt and he's just getting disintegrated. His fleet is getting disintegrated by
I think that's what's going to happen.
fire, and that could totally happen. Yeah. But first we'll see it with Carlson.
Well, yeah, Carlson is in a worse course right now because he just had to deal with Mueller, and his fleet is smaller than Bewcock's.
Right.
Yeah, they called it not the main fleet, basically. So, at the very least,
and while Mueller sent 30% of his forces away, he still kept 70%. So that's
stop.
Right. And while Carlson, it wasn't enough to stop Carlson broke through. They're still going to be doubling back and on your ass as you go.
Right. So even if you continue and you breach through, another fleet or two,
right,
you have another set of fleets coming from behind, mowing down the backsides of your ships. So
right. And I would love to see, since we saw this with Mueller's flagship, and this is pretty much the last thing I'll say for this episode. Okay. We saw the shots ricochet off because of it's the whole prototypical ship with the more angular hole and everything. I would love to see at a point where a ship does get to Reinhardt, right, and does the firing, but it glances off the sides of the ship, and then they're obliterated by Reinhardt's fleet.
That'd be pretty cool.
As kind of like a poetic thing of Reinhardt, that
could have been it.
That could have been it, but it's not. And then it plays more into Reinhardt's basically sense of being indestructible, right? And it basically kind of would reinforce those negative sides of him that made this situation so much worse than it had to be. But
gotcha. Yeah. It's one where yes, there is a possibility. There's a 1 in 100 that Reinhardt could die here,
but it's not going to happen.
But I don't think it's going to happen because we have, at the very least, we haven't done any mistakes on the Reuenthal side of things yet.
Yeah.
But if Reuenthal is issued out and he wants to make a play, there could be a time coming up pretty soon.
Yes.
So,
and Reuenthal's conversation with Mittermeier was just. It was wonderful. What is there truly to say about it? But it makes me excited for whatever his character does in the future because he's so entertaining to see the way he thinks and if it gets to the point where he's like, you know what, I'm actually gonna make my move. I'm kind of rooting for him.
So, y'all, thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the next episode's reaction and discussion right now, though, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there, and all this comes with Discord access, so you can chat with us in the community there about this show, about anime in general, and also be sure to check out our Twitch channel.
We stream every weekday. The info's in the description.
Yeah, so if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.